Today's documentary, The Blackened River, The Drowning of the House of Wisdom. The river ran black. In the winter of 1258, as fire and screams consumed the city of peace, the conquering army turned its attention to the city's greatest treasure. They stormed the great library, the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, and they began to throw bound volumes, loose folios, centuries of knowledge, torn from their shelves and hurled into the murky waters of the Tigris. They threw so many books, manuscripts, and maps that the river, choked with the pulped wisdom of the ages, is said to have run black with ink. It was more than a looting. It was a drowning, a systematic execution of human thought. This is the story of what was lost that day, and of the detectives, historians, archaeologists, and scientists who are now sifting through the wreckage of history. The House of Wisdom was not born in a day. Its foundations were laid not in brick and mortar, but in an idea, a revolutionary command issued 2 centuries before the Mongols came. It was the early 9th century, and the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun, a man haunted by a dream of the ancient philosopher Aristotle, issued a decree: seek out knowledge, wherever it may be found. And so, from the corners of the known world, agents were dispatched. To Constantinople, to the monasteries of Syria, to the markets of India and the ruins of Persia. They returned not with plunder, but with priceless cargo: crumbling Greek codices, Persian astrological charts, Indian medical treatises, and Syriac scientific commentaries. The Caliph established a dedicated institution in Baghdad, a house of wisdom, part library, part translation bureau, part research academy. He paid its scholars in gold, their weight in manuscripts. The stage was set for a cognitive Big Bang, and the minds that assembled there were titans. There was Hunayn ibn Ishaq, the master translator, a Christian who spoke Greek, Syriac, and Arabic with fluency. His method was obsessive. He wouldn't just translate a text, he would hunt down multiple copies, compare them, consult living experts, and produce a version that was often clearer and more accurate than the original. Through his eyes and pen, the works of Hippocrates and Galen, the foundations of Western medicine, passed into Arabic. Then there was Al-Khwarizmi, the mathematician from whose name we derive the word algorithm. In a room lined with astronomical instruments, he penned a treatise whose title gave us another word: algebra. He was synthesizing Indian numerical systems, including the revolutionary concept of zero, and laying down systematic solutions to linear and quadratic equations. The world was being rewired, its knowledge translated, cross-pollinated, and supercharged. For 400 years, the House of Wisdom and the intellectual ecosystem it anchored were the engine of global progress. Astronomers like al-Battani corrected Ptolemy's calculations of the solar year. Physicists like Ibn al-Haytham, in a series of ingenious experiments with dark chambers and light rays, demolished ancient Greek theories of vision and established the foundations of modern optics. Geographers like Al-Idrisi created silver celestial spheres and maps of stunning, unsettling accuracy for the Norman king of Sicily. This was a world where a scholar could be a director of the library, a court physician, and a pioneer of pharmacopoeia like Saba ibn Sahl. The ink was never dry. The library grew, spawning satellite collections in mosques and private homes. It was a living, breathing organism of inquiry. But empires, like all living things, grow frail. By the 13th century, the Abbasid Caliphate was a shadow. The caliph in Baghdad, al-Mustansir, was a political and spiritual figurehead, but his real power had been stripped away by warlords and shifting allegiances. He busied himself with building a magnificent new madrasa, another center of learning, perhaps trying to recapture the old glory. But the world outside was changing with terrifying speed. From the eastern steppes, a storm was gathering. It was led by a grandson of Genghis Khan, Hulagu, a commander with a taste for astronomy and a remorseless talent for siege warfare. His mission was to expand the Mongol Ilkhanate, and the great prize on the map was the symbolic heart of the Islamic world, Baghdad. The caliph, misreading the threat, sent arrogant, dismissive messages. He believed the city's ancient walls and its spiritual status would protect it. He was catastrophically wrong. The Mongols were a new kind of enemy, a machine of conquest honed across continents, and they viewed cities not as prizes to be governed, but as obstacles to be erased. In January 1258, the noose tightened. Hulagu's forces, numbering perhaps 150,000, surrounded Baghdad. They sabotaged dikes, flooded the plains, and cut supply lines. They deployed Chinese siege engineers with catapults capable of hurling not just stones, but incendiary projectiles and diseased carcasses over the walls. For 12 days, the city was pummeled. The defense collapsed. On February 10th, the Caliph al-Mustasim, along with his sons and courtiers, surrendered, hoping for mercy. There was none. The Mongols swept into the city. What followed was, by all accounts, an orgy of destruction so comprehensive it scars the historical record. Contemporary Persian historian Abd-al-Malik Javani, who traveled with Hulagu, wrote of pyramids of skulls erected in the city squares. The caliph was executed, rolled in a carpet and trampled by horses, a Mongol custom against spilling royal blood on earth. The city's irrigation systems, the lifeblood of Mesopotamian civilization for millennia, were systematically destroyed, turning fertile land into salt-encrusted desert. And then they came for the books, the libraries. Why? To the Mongols, fixed institutions of settled people, palaces, mosques, libraries, represented the very sedentary culture they sought to dismantle and absorb. Books were not currency to them. They were symbols of a world order they were obliterating. The House of Wisdom, this vault of accumulated knowledge, was a target of ideological vandalism. Scholars who tried to plead for the manuscripts were likely cut down. The manuscripts themselves, the translations of Aristotle, the medical encyclopedias of Al-Razi, the astronomical tables of the Moraga Observatory, the unique copies of Persian epics, were hauled out. Some were burned outright, the ashes mingling with the smoke of the city. But the most iconic, haunting fate was reserved for the rest. They were thrown, by the cartload, into the Tigris River. The 14th century historian Ibn Kathir described the scene. So many books were thrown into the Tigris that they formed a bridge that the army could cross. The river, already choked with bodies, was now poisoned with ink. A metaphor made devastatingly literal. The river of knowledge, dammed and blackened by ignorance. The immediate aftermath was a silence that fell across the intellectual world. A circuit breaker of civilization, as one modern historian put it. The pipeline of knowledge that had flowed from Baghdad to the rest of the world, to Cordoba, to Cairo, to Toledo, was severed. While fragments survived in other libraries in Damascus, Cairo, and the Maghreb, the critical mass, the beating heart, was stilled. The Mongols eventually converted to Islam and became patrons of learning themselves, but the loss was irreplaceable. Think of it as a global hard drive with a single, centralized backup, suddenly and violently formatted. The works that were lost were not just copies. They were often the definitive Arabic translations from which all future copies, in any language, would spring. They were the original commentaries, the marginalia where scholars debated and advanced ideas. They were the only surviving records of countless ancient texts, particularly from the Greek pre-Socratic philosophers and the later Hellenistic scientists, whose original versions had long since turned to dust in Byzantium. This is where our modern detectives enter the story. Their crime scene is 8 centuries cold. Their evidence is fragmentary, scattered across the globe. Historians like Dr. Jonathan Bloom and Dr. Sheila Blair pore over surviving manuscript catalogs from other libraries, looking for clues. A note in a margin, copied from a Baghdad original, dated 1210. A reference in a later Persian text quoting a work no one has ever seen. They are forensic bibliographers, reconstructing the library's inventory by its ghostly echoes. Then there are the archaeologists. In the 1980s, Iraqi archaeologists believed they had found the physical foundations of the House of Wisdom near the old Abbasid Palace complex. But wars and instability have frozen further excavation. The site, like the knowledge it held, remains buried, tantalizingly out of reach. The most tantalizing clues, however, may lie in the river itself. Could the Tigris still hold secrets? In 2003, a team of environmental scientists taking core samples from the riverbed near Baghdad found a strange, distinct layer of sediment dating to the mid-13th century. It was abnormally rich in organic carbon and certain metallic compounds consistent with medieval inks, iron gall ink made from oak galls and vitriol. It's not a bridge of books, but it is a chemical ghost, a whisper in the mud of that catastrophic dumping. Meanwhile, digital humanities projects are attempting a virtual reconstruction. The Zayed Digital Library and others are cataloging every known surviving Arabic scientific manuscript from the period, mapping their lineages and trying to digitally reassemble the intellectual network that was shredded in 1258. What specifically did we lose? We know some of the names. We lost Al-Khwarizmi's original works on astronomy, far more detailed than his surviving mathematical texts. We lost the bulk of the library of the Banu Musa brothers, three brilliant engineers who funded the translation movement and authored groundbreaking works on automata and mechanics. We likely lost the only Arabic copy of Ptolemy's Planetary Hypotheses, a critical bridge between his astronomy and cosmology. We lost untold volumes of poetry, history, and philosophy that provided the cultural context for the science. But the true loss is incalculable. It's the conversation that was cut off, the experiment never designed, the theorem never conjectured, the discovery never made because the foundational text was dissolving in the Tigris. The trajectory of scientific progress in the West, which would later be fueled by translations of these very Arabic works into Latin, was delayed, distorted, and diminished. The story of the House of Wisdom is not just a tale of ancient tragedy. It is a stark parable for every age. It asks us, where is our House of Wisdom today? Is it in the cloud, in server farms vulnerable to solar flares or cyber sabotage? Is it in our great national libraries, facing the dual threats of neglect and ideological fury? The burning of the Library of Alexandria is a legend. The drowning of the House of Wisdom is a documented historical fact. It reminds us that civilization is not a guarantee. It is a fragile construct, built on parchment and pixel, and it can be undone in a season of barbarism. The scholars of Baghdad believed knowledge was a light that belonged to all humanity. In 1258, that light was almost snuffed out. The blackened waters of the Tigris are a permanent stain on history, a warning etched in ink and ashes. Our task now is not just to mourn what was lost, but to vigilantly protect the houses of wisdom we have built in its shadow, to ensure that no river ever runs black with ink again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you fascinating documentaries on history, science, civilizations, mysteries, and the untold stories that shaped our world. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss a new release. See you in the next one.